Good evening and welcome back. It's Thursday night, and tonight we're going to be hosting someone for the first time who is not with us in Southern Ontario. So this is kind of fun and different. She actually told me that she's in Whistler, and now I think we should all be insanely jealous because it's absolutely gorgeous out there. I've been. Tonight, we're welcoming Jessica. Jessica is, and I have to remember to get this right, you are a certified holistic nutritionist.
Yes. Yeah.
Wonderful. I did get it right. Anyway, I've been so looking forward to having Jessica on the webcast. I want to say this is the first exception. We love promoting local business. Jessica lives in Vancouver now, but grew up here, and I'll let her tell you a little bit about that. But we've done kind of a series through these webcasts on health and nutrition. And so we've talked to a variety of different practitioners, from a personal trainer to a chiropractor to a massage therapist, a variety of different people in this whole area of health and nutrition, especially as we've been going through this period of COVID, which we are apparently still in, and trying to keep our immune function as healthy as possible. And so I was thrilled when I had the opportunity to invite Jessica to come and join us on a webcast, because this is right up her alley. This is part of her expertise. So I've learned a little bit about what she does, and I'm really interested in learning a whole bunch more. And hopefully she has some very practical tips and tools for us to use to keep us as well as possible. So welcome, Jessica. And yes, I am jealous that you're in Whistler as we're suffering.
I mean, anytime, but you'll have to quarantine for 14 days.
True enough. But if you would tell us just a little bit more about what your history is, where you came from, because you started out in your continuing education heading in a little bit different direction. So take a few minutes and tell us about that and what led you to where you are.
Yeah, so, well, thank you for having me. It's actually really awesome to be here with you and to see everyone in Windsor, not really see you, but communicate with you all through here. I started out in the kinesiology program at the University of Windsor. So in 2008, I started that, and I wanted to go into the movement science realm. So I think when everybody starts kinesiology, they want to be a physiotherapist, and that was the big thing. Like, I'm going to be a physio or a chiropractor. And then as you get in your second year, like, this is really hard. I don't know if I can do this. And then more people start to wean out, and then your third and fourth year, you're like, this is actually really amazing and interesting. And so after I graduated, I was like, you know what, I would love to get into physio and do that. So I put myself in positions where I was volunteering at physio clinics, or I was working in physio. I was a kinesiologist for a little while, and after that I kind of felt it wasn't really my thing, and I said there's got to be something else that I could do. I was working in a sports bar, although I loved it, for about 7 years. I was like, I need to take my education. I know I can do more, and there was just something inside that I was like, I have to like be on the West Coast and at least continue my education that way. So I was laying in bed one night and I was like, what the heck am I going to do? And then I thought back to all of the times when I was studying, and to avoid studying, I would actually cook. So I was like, maybe I should get into nutrition. And I've always been amazed by the human body and what it can do, and how we are just such a powerhouse. We're amazing. And I wanted to be able to kind of follow that more and, go along the lines of food with that. So I studied at the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition here in Vancouver, and that was a 1-year program, and I studied holistic nutrition. And so we get into consultations with clients, and I was like, oh, maybe I could really do that, but I reverted back to cooking, and it always has been cooking. So now I am a personal chef, so I cook, personal holistic chef. So I do cook in home for clients, depending on their diet. If they have specific diets that they're following, I cook for them whatever their needs may be. So this is what I'm doing now.
I am so sorry you're this far away. it's like dinner time, and you're
I know, right?
talking about food and cooking for people, and we're all salivating, thinking about what something you could cook for us.
You should do all that I just did. I've got like a fridge full of food now.
Oh, but you're way too far away. I have a question to start with, because along our life path, which is mine is a whole lot longer than yours, the different experience that we've had along the way was the Canada Food Guide has changed, what physicians recommended has changed, what Nutritionist has recommended has changed, and I like the direction where we're going, but I encounter people who have said, oh, you know what, I was running into all kinds of health issues, and so I stopped eating meat, and all of a sudden I felt way better. And then I talked to somebody else who says, yeah, I cut out a whole bunch of stuff and I eat a lot of meat, and all of a sudden I feel way better, and a lot of my ailments disappeared. My point is, I have no idea. And maybe we're also biologically unique, that maybe there is no sort of solution, and that there are many solutions. Maybe you want to comment on this, because I think of all of the areas of nutrition, I think it's pretty safe to say that we all kind of think it's a good idea to eat as close to the farm as possible, right? We get our food as fresh as possible and organic if possible. But I think a lot of people are just incredibly confused, and probably I'm in that clan. So if you want to take a couple minutes and just maybe speak to this, give us a little bit of education about this from your perspective.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a few parts to that whole thing, but the beginning, when Canada's Food Guide came out, you know, we have seen that it was heavy on dairy and meat, and then grains not so much, and veggies were kind of like in the middle. And then as it went on, it was maybe more veggies, not as much dairy, still a little bit of meat, and then maybe heavier grains. And as we go, we're finding that the food guide can sometimes be confusing. And I think a really good thing to note as humans, as we are changing and evolving, is to really try to hone in and focus on eating intuitively, because what you may find works for you doesn't work for someone down the street. So when they come to you and say, you know, I'm on keto and it's a great diet for me, and you know, it's cured all of these things, and so, you know, that person may hear that and be like, oh, maybe I should try keto, not understanding their body. And they are unique and very different from, let's say, Sally down the road, who has now tried this. So I think when we go towards trying to eat healthier, or we try to change up our diet, I feel like nothing is ever set in stone. There is always some time for you to take to see what works for you, see what doesn't. Maybe you do better eating more vegetables and less meat, and maybe dairy works for you and maybe it doesn't. So there is no problem in flexibility and trying to see what works, and then also being realistic with what's sustainable for you, because you know, you have these diets, and I'm not opposed to any one singular diet. What works for you might not work for another person, but it's really just kind of like honing in and seeing what works for you. And if you find something that's good, stick with it. And as we change, so does food change. Agriculture and the way that food is grown, how the crops are sprayed, that all has an effect on the way food is being consumed. And of course, you want to try to stick to local, seasonal, organic if you can. I know it's not always in everybody's budget, or just depending on where you live, you may not have access to it. But a good start would be to probably stay away from the frozen boxed foods. Like if it has an expiry date in 2 years, it's probably not the greatest for you. So making small changes here and there, and really trying to take pieces even from different diets and see what works is is always a good thing to do. And who knows, what may work for you now might not work for you in a year. So diet and nutrition is not always solid. It's ever changing, as our bodies are. So it's good to recognize that there is an ebb and flow with those things.
I totally agree. From a personal perspective, I can identify very much with what you're saying, because my spouse and I don't eat identically. We eat a lot of similar things, but we don't eat identically. So I realize that there's sort of these individualistic differences. So we're keenly aware of that. But one of the things that I have found is confusing in my conversation with others about how to figure these things out is, how do you actually figure them out, right? Like people have talked to me about elimination diets, right? What do? You cut out all dairy, and then you do it for a period of time to try to figure out whether that works for you. And then you introduce one thing at a time, back in to try to work your way through these things. That can be a very frustrating process if you say intuitive, right? When you talk about how to be intuitive and listen to your body, that's not an easy thing if you're just starting out. So maybe you can give some of our audience some help on steps to take, time frames, hints on how to listen to your own body, and some of those things that might be helpful to our audience.
Yeah, so your body is actually really good. It's always giving you cues as if something's wrong, if something is good, you feel happy about it. Especially when we're eating, I know that specifically, I'll give an example for myself. If I have too much bread, which can be a huge issue for me because I love bread, but one of the things that happens is my heart rate increases a crazy amount. I will actually start to sweat. And so cues like that coming from your body after you eat, and you always want to give yourself about a 2-hour time frame from when you start to eat and then after, because it takes about 2 hours for your food to get through your system, go through your stomach after you've chewed it, and then to really get in. And then once it's like in your gut, that's when the science experiments start to happen. So give your body some time in noticing those cues. So if you start to sweat, you get an increased heart rate. If you sometimes get dizzy after eating food, or you get itchy, your skin gets itchy, these are all signs that your body is saying something is wrong and something is not right. But you can kind of monitor those things. I would probably give yourself about 2 to 3 weeks if you decide to cut something out, and then go from there and see how you feel after even a few days. Because I know even when we cut out caffeine, like immediately, I'm pretty sure we have all gone through this at one point. We cut it out and you're like, oh, I have such a bad headache. But it's giving your body that time to really kind of make an adjustment itself and notice, okay, this person is not eating dairy anymore, or this person's not eating gluten. Why don't we start to rebuild? And then when you introduce it again, see if you have those same responses.
Yeah, that's good wisdom. I think a 2 or 3 week time frame. That's just so that you understand, because we didn't talk about this ahead of time. But for me, this issue with gluten was serious. It was severe. For me, it was anyway. Yeah. So if I consumed gluten, I would have a body inflammation, full body inflammation, for as long as 16, 18 weeks after consuming gluten. Yeah. And it was just making life miserable. And it wasn't that it wasn't livable, it was just miserable. And so when I figured out what it was, and it was with the help of my physician and doing a test, when I figured out what it was and I stopped it, all the symptoms that were associated with that stopped virtually instantly. That doesn't happen all the time with people when they figure something out like that. Sometimes it takes a while before the symptoms start to dissipate. But in this particular case, they dissipated virtually instantly. So I knew immediately that was it. And I also realized that I was not going to consume any more of it. ever again unless it was inadvertent, because I felt so bad. But one of the key symptoms, because you mentioned a couple of things, one of the key symptoms that I was experiencing was acid reflux. And that literally disappeared overnight and has never recurred again. And so as I talk to other people about dietary issues, a lot of people say that acid reflux is a common theme. So what are some of the things that people should look for inside of their dietary habits that might cause something like that you might be able to tell them, try avoiding this to start?
Are you asking what types of foods should they avoid?
Sure. If that's a good question.
Well, I mean, it's going to vary among people, but I know a lot of people have issues with gluten, or they have issues with dairy. Sometimes it will cause gluten and dairy, as well as red meat. Now, I will preface with saying that I am not a doctor, so if you decide to follow any of these things, please consult a physician, your family physician first. But these are just things that we know about food, that they are inflammatory, or they cause more acid to be created in the stomach, or what could actually happen is that you don't have enough acid in your stomach to actually help digestion along. So digestion starts in your mouth, chewing. And what a lot of people do is they eat on the go. It's really quick. They're not actually thinking about what they're doing, that they're sitting down and eating a meal, or they'll be eating and watching TV. So like you're watching TV and you're not really focusing on what you're doing. So you chew really quick and you just want to get it down because you're in a rush to go somewhere else. So that is like essentially putting a rock inside your mouth to be digested now in your stomach. And your stomach is like, what do I do with this? This thing is huge. Like there wasn't even enough saliva for me to like get this going. And instead of it being a bunch of sand particles. So it's much easier to break down the sand particles than it is to break down the rock. So sometimes when we cut out things that are like pro-inflammatory, like cheeses and meats and gluten, we tend to notice that our body is able to focus on the actual digestion of things. So I can't say cut out something and it will be the answer for you. I can't say add this and it will be the answer for you. I think part of being a holistic nutritionist is incorporating all aspects of nutrition, which is also body, mind, and spirit. So if you are eating on the go, you're not thinking about what you're doing, you're stressed out while you're eating, or you're eating in the car trying to get to an appointment at 3 and you've got 3 minutes to scarf down a sandwich, your body is not thinking about the actual digestion, which could actually cause you to have acid reflux because you're stressed trying to get somewhere. And so now your fight or flight is kicking in and it's not actually thinking about digesting food. So you could have a Big Mac or you could eat an apple and your body would respond to it the same way.
So when my mother said at the dining room table about, because she was a nurse, when she said about how many times you're supposed to chew before you take another bite, she was actually giving me good wisdom.
She was. When we were younger and we didn't want to eat something, we would chew it for a really long time. So that was good in a way, but yes, we have to be mindful of how we're actually eating, because it's a ripple effect from what starts here to here, and then how our body ends up using it is really important. So I think it's also, yes, cutting out some specific foods that you may find don't sit well with you is important. It's also important to note that, okay, this is your time to eat, so let's just focus on that. So it's all part of it.
So I'm going to come back to another thought that I had, if I don't lose that thought. But we have a question from the live audience. It says, as you age, I believe your metabolism slows down. What dietary changes would you recommend that might accommodate the slower metabolism?
Okay. So yes, as you age, people do find that their metabolism does slow. Even being older, as opposed to being, let's say, I don't know, 15 or 16. When you skip breakfast, your body is in a state of thinking, okay, I didn't get breakfast now, so maybe when lunch comes, I can just hoard everything once it comes. And that in and of itself is slowing your metabolism down, because it's getting used to the fact that you are not eating regularly. So in terms of slow metabolism, what you can actually do, what I found with clients is that if they eat smaller snacks during the day, as long as you're not like prolonging the time in between your eating. So let's say you eat at 8 o'clock and then you don't eat again until 5. That time from 8 to 5 is quite large in your body, trying to maintain homeostasis with all other systems. So it's going to be pulling sugars and fats from like your muscles, and we don't want that to happen, because then this is how the whole process of metabolism slows. Then weight gain starts, because your body is just kind of hoarding all the sugars, all the fats, and because it doesn't know when it's going to get fed again. So I think an important part of this is to maintain some type of dietary consistency throughout the day, whether that's having some carrots in the morning and then you balance it with some healthy fats like some hummus and crackers mid-afternoon, just things like that. I find it's better than eating a light breakfast and then a really heavy dinner, because you're like, well, I didn't eat all day, so I need to balance this out and eat. And you may feel that way because you're starving by the end of the day. But this is how metabolism starts to slow, because your body is not used to the consistency of getting food and nourishment during the day.
Wonderful. There are lots of people who have opinions about the timing of meals, and especially you made reference to a big meal. Typically, North Americans either eat a large meal at lunch or probably more particularly at dinner. And we also live in this this maybe not right at the moment, but we live in this kind of crazy lifestyle where I drive by restaurants. Of course, everybody's outdoors now, and I see people, in patios, and they're eating at, big meals at 8 o'clock or 8:30 at night. Maybe you have some opinion on this, and I would be interested as to what that is, because I have heard people say, well, if you want to eat a large meal, eat it in the middle of the day and don't eat a real large meal at the end of the day. And then sort of, what period of time prior to actually going to sleep should we be giving our body the opportunity to digest?
So in terms of digestion, it normally takes your body about, I would say, 2 hours for once it reaches your mouth to your stomach, and then essentially like a 24-hour time span for it to be fully digested, all the nutrients to be absorbed and used throughout your body. So when you speak of eating at 8 o'clock at night, and I'm guilty of this, I do this all the time, and it's not.
Thank you for being honest with us. I'm guilty too.
Life is crazy. It happens. And so, I mean, sometimes the only availability you have is to eat at 8 o'clock at night because you haven't eaten all day, like server life. Hello. So when you do eat that late, and then let's say you're going to bed at 10 o'clock or 11, your body is still in that digestion phase. So as you're going to bed and the melatonin is kicking in, you're trying to sleep, your body is like, am I sleeping or am I digesting? I don't know what to do here. So then you could wake up in the morning and you have this terrible stomach ache. You're getting acid reflux because your body is going to bed. It's not thinking of digesting. So while it's going to bed and it's trying to reset and restart, it's not pulling all of the nutrients that it can from your body, because your food is still kind of stuck in your stomach. So when I see people eating at 8 o'clock at night, I say, good, you're getting some food. But I just know for me personally that I would not feel so great after I had a big meal at 8 o'clock at night. But I mean, it's what we can only manage sometimes, and that's not a bad thing. I would just try to keep it more minimal than all the time.
That's very helpful. One of the other things that maybe our audience is intrigued with is just because we get so bombarded in the advertising world about, what we should be eating, what should be tasty to us, or what should be healthy. And I remember when we were making a lot of dietary changes, 30, 40 years ago, and people were saying, oh, you eat rabbit food. Yeah, actually, it is rabbit food because there's rabbits in our garden ravaging our garden as we speak. So clearly it is rabbit food. But at the same time, trying to get advice that we believe is sound advice can be very, very challenging. So maybe you can speak to, from the designation you have, from the expertise that you have, give some advice to people about where they would seek out someone to give them some competent advice if they're really serious about how to make positive dietary changes.
Mm-hmm. It's a really good question. There's a few things that you could actually do. In terms of making positive dietary changes, what we have always been taught and what we've kind of been ingrained with understanding out here on the West Coast is that local is so important. The more that you can actually get in touch and know where your food is coming from is paramount almost to anything else. You can understand the soil that your food is grown in. You understand the farmers who are actually growing that food. You get to take into account how far your food has traveled from the farm to your table. So when we're getting all of this produce from California, and you don't know when it was picked, you don't know how long it's been on that shelf, and in that time we think we are making healthy decisions by buying the strawberries that are there, as opposed to like a strawberry yogurt, which might just have a ton of sugar, so we want to buy the strawberries. But all of these things kind of add up in terms of proper nutrition. So dietary changes can be as simple as maybe including one thing in your diet that was grown locally by a farmer. Maybe you don't know the farmer or you get to know them, but include one thing a week in your diet that comes from close to home, as close to home as it can be. The other thing about what we can do is we can kind of, the way we manage our diet, we can kind of cut out some pre-boxed foods, refined foods, and we can get to the more whole foods, because the more whole foods we get, the more we can pull from the nutrients and the vitamins and minerals that are already in it and not processed down. Because the more that we buy processed, the more the longer shelf life it is, but that also means fillers and preserves have been added and the important nutrients have been taken out, and then it is enriched. So the word enriched, when we see on boxes, usually means the actual vitamin or mineral has been taken out and then just put in with a substitute vitamin mineral that is like a mimic of it. So if we can try to get in touch with a farmer, eliminate one thing, eliminate one refined boxed item. And then also, I don't want to say you can't eat like cheese or meat or dairy, because the environment in which we do eat is also very important as well. So if we're sitting with friends around a table and there is spinach dip and there is bread with a ton of cheese, sign me up. I'm not going to say no, but also know that the environment and the happiness and the joy that is surrounded by this food, knowing that you are eating with friends and family. I grew up always eating with people, so that it was just a thing. Like, food was always there. There was always good conversation over food, and you always just felt so good when you were done eating. Because along with eating really healthy food, or maybe not so healthy food, the joy and happiness that was behind it is all a part of it, is all encompassing. So, I mean, have dinner with a friend. 6 feet apart, have dinner with a friend and enjoy what you're eating, whether you find it healthy or not.
So you haven't mentioned chocolate yet, which is wonderful because it's my nemesis.
I have a bag of dark chocolate chip cookies in my cupboard.
So
If you're feeling it.
whenever I'm engaging anybody talking about health and nutrition, I try not to talk about chocolate.
Well, that's the thing. Everybody thinks like, oh, you're a nutritionist, I shouldn't tell you what I eat. But really, it's just what makes you feel good. And if there are certain dietary restrictions that you have to follow, then so be it. But I would never say, oh, you ate that. Like, no, it's just
Well,
what makes you feel good.
For fear that my personal trainer actually watches this webcast, I already know what he would say, because he from time to time, he will say, I want you to do a food journal, right?
Yeah.
I want to see what you eat, because he tries to design the programs suited to, good dietary habits, at least from his perspective. So when he talks about, because he does like chocolate too, but when he talks about, having a piece of dark chocolate, and I'm like, well, that's good for the first bite.
Yeah, we can have a few of this a day. Like, is that okay?
Anyway, so let's leave chocolate out of the conversation for now. Okay. It is one of the things that I enjoy at times as part of the lifestyle. So I just like you and bread and some of the other things. So as long as we're not making that our significant piece of our diet, then that's perfectly fine.
And all in moderation as well. Like when you come to find you're cutting something out and then you're substituting with something else, but it's not quite that. I think we need to be really cognizant of that, as well as being flexible with that. If I want this, it's okay for me to eat it. And I think with diet culture now, it's always like, cut these top 5 foods out to feel the best. And you're like, but I don't really want to do that. And you don't have to do that. I think with all of the information out there, it just really confuses people. So the next time that specific diet comes out, it's like, oh, maybe I should follow this one. And then they do that, and then it doesn't work for them because it's not sustainable. Then they revert back to like, oh, well, I hate diets, and I'm just like going to go off the rails. And so I think when we're in that diet culture of like constant fluctuation and not really maintaining anything sustainable, it honestly leads us to be in kind of a worse situation. As previously, maybe we could have just maybe changed one thing. Like, all of these diets can be so crazy sometimes. If you're going from like, let's say, a regular diet, have your meat, potatoes, veggies, grains, all that, and then you go to keto and you're like, oh, I can't have a vegetable, or I can't have bread, and then it just makes you crave that so much. And then you have your cheat day, and then like all day you're eating bread, and then you feel like crap at the end of the day. So I think we all just have to be really patient with ourselves, because this is not an overnight thing, and health is an always changing, ever evolving kind of battle sometimes we may find. But I think we just have to be patient with ourselves every day and eat what we feel we would like.
You've given us some really great hints. If I can take a step backwards, I think some of the summary that would be, don't eat out of a box. Don't eat out of a bag. All right. Like if we can try to set the process. Sorry?
As much as you can. I mean, within reason.
Correct. Yeah. So, sorry, I'm not quoting you. I'm just kind of trying to package this together so that I understand. But the other things that you've mentioned that I think are really key are the sustainability. So, I don't think any time in my lifetime I've kind of jumped onto some sort of a dietary fad, right? Something that you just say, oh, this sounds like a great idea, I'll just go and try that.
Yeah.
Because I find that none of those things are sustainable. And for me to be able to live my life well, I need to be able to incorporate things that I can do all of the time, right? And do it on a consistent basis. So I have a tendency to do what you suggested, which is change one thing at a time. right? Change one thing, see if it works, and then do it for a while. And then you incorporate it into your lifestyle. I know this is like, it seems like a million years ago now, but at one point in time in my life, I would drink pop. And that was pretty normal in the 70s and 80s, right? It might still be normal today. I don't know. I don't do that anymore. But I remember I didn't just wake up one day and say, well, that's it. I'm not going to have another can of pop. That's it. I'm done. No, it was a lifestyle change that we went through where we slowly cut it out, because the first time I started consuming a lot of water, I was like, oh, this is kind of boring. Now I wake up at sunup and drink 40 ounces of water while I work out, and I enjoy it, right? But it was because I did it slowly over a period of time that it just becomes part of your lifestyle, and then it's sustainable. So you've given us some really, really great hints here for people who are interested in reviewing and reassessing their dietary habits. We've already established you're a little bit too far away to cook for us, unfortunately. But if I happen to be in the Vancouver area, so I did ask you earlier about where people should go or could go to get good advice. Tell me about people who have your certification. Is there somewhere that people can go search this out? And is there any insurance coverage that is available to cover any of this for people?
So depending on the type of business that you do work for, holistic nutritionists are still kind of in the realm of getting to there to be like, yay, we can be covered. But we're still in the works for that. I know naturopaths, I believe, are covered, and they are naturopathic doctors, so they will give you a wide array of tips and tricks, and they're able to study you more deeply, so they can take blood samples and have tests done for you to really get a full understanding of your body and what you need specifically. Your family physician can also do that for you as well. You just really have to go in knowing what to ask. So it is, if there's something specific, let's say you're wanting to know about a diet for pre-diabetes, or look into that first. Do a little bit of your own research, and then go to your doctor and say, look, I was wanting to start this diet, would this be good? And there is nothing wrong with outsourcing and seeing other people who can really help you. I know there are a ton of holistic nutritionists in Windsor. There is a girl by the name of Kayla Segan, who I used to actually play volleyball with. She owns Wellness Market in Lakeshore, and she is a holistic nutritionist, and I believe she has nutritionists working for her as well, where they can provide plans for you, meal plans, give you samples of supplements. She has a supplement store. So all of these things that you can supplement with a good diet to change, which I believe some supplements as well are maybe covered through specific insurance companies. So, I mean, there are many avenues and venues that you can go down when, wanting to take your own health in your own hands. And I think the first start is really understanding your body and how it works, and then taking it from there and seeing what you need, not what your neighbor said would be good. So I think once we can kind of all get educated on our own bodies and how they work, because our bodies are always, always, always in a state of healing and growth, and wanting us to just maintain a level of healthy function. So no matter what you do, I think your body will be happy with you for it. So there's nothing wrong with going out and seeing what works. You're trying something, and if it fails, at least you tried. So many, many people to talk to about that.
So that means that somewhere in this area, people could actually search out people like yourself who have the same qualification?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly all of the holistic nutritionists in Windsor, but I believe there is a search. If you go on Google, you can type in holistic nutritionists in Windsor, and a list will pop up, or naturopathic doctors if you're looking for something a little different. I think naturopathic doctors kind of go into herbs as well. So there are so many things that we can do
Mm-hmm.
for our own.
Yeah, we actually had a naturopath on one of our webcasts. Somebody from Lakeshore. So, trying to connect these dots, this is really helpful. Yeah. And I realize that you're on the West Coast, so I'm not expecting that you're gonna know everybody here and just what to do. But just gaining some of this information is really essential and helpful to us. It's helpful to me. I'm never afraid to talk about where I am in life. I'm 61 years old. I had at the beginning of these webcast series, I had my personal trainer on. I'm going to be having him on again in the not too distant future because for the first time in my life, and you went through kinesiology, so please go easy on me. I never lifted a weight in my life. And, I just at age 59, I was like, oh, you know what? It's time to do this. So paid attention to diet. Had lots of exercise, played hockey on a regular basis, still do, other than right now with COVID, and then got actively involved in pushing some weight, and just have grown to love it. So I get a chance to enjoy the food that I have. I enjoy the life that I have. I enjoy the mobility that I have, and these are things that my peers are keenly interested in, because as we start to get into probably, I would laughingly refer to it as middle age, but as we get into middle age, we're wanting to stay as active as possible, as healthy as possible. We hopefully live to see grandchildren and spend time with grandchildren, and we want to enjoy our lives, right? We have the ability to conduct our lifestyle differently than maybe some of the previous generation did, who may not have been as active as we are. And I certainly can relate to you being on the West Coast, because as I've been out there, I've seen it for myself. Oh my goodness, people are extremely active out there on the West Coast. So, all of this is really helpful to us. So I want to thank you so much for taking time for us today, and for sharing your passion and your expertise. If you're comfortable with it, after we're done and I edit this down for our Facebook page and YouTube, I can put your contact information or some relevant sites for people to search out to try to learn more about this. But with a 3-hour time change, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful that you took the time for us to share some of your passion and expertise with us. I'm very, very grateful, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And if anybody has any questions, you can, Steve, if we put up my email, you can just email me, and I'll be happy to go into more detail about everything. I feel like there is so much I could talk about, and you can't get it all in 45 minutes. So more questions or concerns, I can get into it with you, and look forward to hearing from some of you.
Perfect. Well, I can tell you that we would be delighted to have you back sometime if you would be willing to do that. I realize, the whole topic of nutrition can't be summarized in 45 minutes. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. So we would be thrilled to have you back if you would come back sometime and talk to us, and we can pick maybe a couple more specific topics and go through that. So if you're agreeable, we'd love to have you back to do that.
I would love it.
Wonderful. So to all of you who have joined us live, thank you very much. Thank you for your participation. We hope that we have given you something that's useful to you. Every week, we hope to bring you content that is practical and useful to your life and where you are. And we want to thank you for joining us. And if you're seeing this on YouTube, thank you for taking time to view our content, and we hope you enjoy it. So have a wonderful night, and thank you again for joining us. Take care.